So I'll just continue describing Programming for Humanists. And I'll just, for the video's sake, say it's available at Programming for Humanists. So you can see the URL up there at the top of the PowerPoint, and that we it's a 2-hour webinar held on Fridays from 9 to 11 Central Time. So I'm going to tell you about my first day this semester. Liz is going to laugh. So here is a recounting of my first day. I need to play this music. I hope you can hear it. My first day was horrible. It was the worst thing in the world. It was just horrifying. Okay, enough. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So first of all, my lead developer, Matt Christie, was up all night with a sick child whom he had to take to a doctor, so he couldn't come. Any of the people who could have helped me teach the class were out that day, and we hadn't planned backup. So I was completely alone. That's this little figure here yelling help. I went down into the room thinking, it's okay, I've got it under control. The Join Me software that we have used every semester until now had been recently updated, and it now no longer allowed me to project sound to any of the participants. And I got online with the Join Me help people, and they were on my computer. I gave them access to my computer, remote access, and they couldn't get the sound to work. At which point they were asking me for the headset that came with my Mac, and I just was like, don't even talk to me. I can't even deal with this right now. Finally, I figured out a way to call in so that people could hear me, but I thought other people were going to have to call in too. They didn't. Join Me, however, continued to malfunction, and they kept getting kicked off. People kept getting kicked off throughout the 2 hours and had to get back on. But we made do. We hobbled along. Luckily for me, the screen in the room wouldn't work either. So it turned out that wires that allowed you to plug into the wall to the projector to access the HDMI wire that went to the projector, if it gets hot, just goes off or something. Anyway, we found finally one outlet. So I was standing with my computer next to this outlet by a wall that worked, and we projected on the screen for the people that were in the room. So it's fine. I'm starting at half an hour late. I have Join Me sort of working. I have the screen now working. I go to my application on my computer, and Camtasia is no longer on my computer, so I can't record what I'm teaching, which we make the videos available after every class. So I just start teaching, and it went more or less as you can expect. But people were troopers, and they came back, and they didn't quit, which is fantastic. So, but what we learned from this is we really worked hard on getting the physical infrastructure beefed up. We had even tested the Join Me software the day before, but we hadn't fully tested it on my computer. We hadn't done all the things that you really need to do to make 100% sure that something's going to work. The room has continued to malfunction. So every time we test something and get something working, I mean, the last thing we did was put a ladder on the seminar table and climb up into the ceiling and put insulation around a box. So the room has continued to malfunction. Back up, like bring digital projectors with you that you might need in the room, even if there is a projector already in there. That's all I can say about rooms. Recording equipment, we now have multiple options. I do have Camtasia installed, and we got new software. I wish it was as good as this, Lisa, what you've got, but it's called Blue Jeans, and it has recording capacities, and it's quite good, and that's what my university had purchased, so we got hooked up to that. The human infrastructure was huge. What we really needed was a whole scenario about if someone falls ill, who's the next person in the hot seat, and who has to be called and who has to come in, so that we made sure that we always had 2 people in the room at the same time. Because with me alone, I mean, some people were having trouble getting on Join Me, and I was chatting with them and working with the Join Me guy who was trying to help me on my computer and trying to work with the guy in the room I'd gotten from IT services to get the projector working. So you need somebody else in the room with you to be dealing with chat and dealing with all of these things. So the human infrastructure is crucial, and we started this base camp Programming for Humanists thing, and you can see now we've got blue jeans instructions for moderators and blue jeans instructions for hosts. So there's always a host in the room and then the person who's leading the class discussion. We also have all the guest lecturers. Quinn Dombrowski did Drupal for Humanists already. David Rettenmeyer is going to show a TEI plugin for Drupal. Cliff Anderson's doing xQuery. Stefan Sinclair is doing Python notebooks. And so we have on Basecamp like their phone numbers and all of those things were so that we can call them and figure out, you know, why they're not on or what's going wrong. And so here is the schedule. You can see a little bit of the schedule for Programming for Humanists. And I did an introduction to XSLT, and then because of when Quinn was available, had to skip 3 classes and then go back to XSLT. That's not ideal, and I don't think I'll do that again. But I wanted to show you the syllabus. Quinn did a beautiful job of providing in Dropbox her chapter, her book, and then gave detailed instructions on what to read as well as exercises. My part of the syllabus is much less developed because I'm still working on this book. And so one of the things that I used for 2 of the classes is Dropbox. I don't think Dropbox is ideal for sharing folders with people. The reason is, as I'll show you now, here are the folders, and here's all the people who joined. And people take things in and out as they can, and so things just start disappearing, and then they put them back. So that class 1 fall 2015 PowerPoint shouldn't be there. It just got put back by somebody named Jean. And then if you look down in the major folder, those other things, well, Quinn's book should be there, but the XML document shouldn't be there. It got put in by somebody, Catherine, who accidentally deleted it. So Dropboxes, we also used a Dropbox at the Early Modern Digital Agendas seminar at the Folger this summer. And somebody, it was actually a presenter, somebody who was teaching the seminar, went in one night and emptied all the Dropbox documents. He thought he was just getting copies downloaded on his own computer, but you know, if you've got Dropbox in your Finder window, if you pull things out of it, it actually comes out. So we figured out a way to fix it. There's a little trash can up here, a little trash can icon, and you can actually see all of the things that were deleted and restore them, which is quite wonderful. But Dropbox is not ideal. I do think the really ideal thing for us has been maybe just putting the whole book up like Quinn did in Dropbox, because you can just see one thing is there and whether it's gone or not, and you can restore it. And then putting all the files that you want to share with people in Drupal, making them available as downloads via a Drupal interface or something where you're actually posting exercises and the materials for the class. So here's an example. Here's my chapter 2, which I'm going to be teaching on Friday. And I've got the chapter draft, how to make an XSLT, and people can download that by clicking on it. And then I have exercises here, and then files you may need for these exercises, which they can get either you know, just by clicking or by right-clicking to get those folders. And I think that's a much better system than putting things in Dropbox. For me, it is really hard to teach in webinar software. I have, you know, I think really been disconcerted a lot of the time that I've been teaching XSLT, and it's because I can't see people's faces. One of my students put this up in Facebook reminding me of a class that we had together. I was young back then. And he's now a teacher, and he's now a professor. But at any rate, when you're face-to-face with these people, you can see when with people, You can see when they're confused. You can see their reactions. You know, if they're looking completely clueless, you suddenly get a sense of, okay, back up. I need to go back to basics and say where I am in the material. And I have really had a hard time with the teaching a webinar because of losing that face-to-face contact. Oops, something went wrong. Unless that's the end. Nope. Oh yes, it is. So that's the end. And I wanted to just say that the other problem that I've had with teaching Drupal XSLT is that when you run XSLT, which I do live, so I actually will open Oxygen and have an open XML document and an open XSLT and make tweaks and run things. And when King's College London, when they teach XSLT, they always warn their students, I'm going to tell you what this is going to do. I'm going to run it, and on the third time it will work. And that's the way XSLT is. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are computer science professors, and they can their programming. They don't do it live. They actually will film it and then run the video of it rather than trying to do it live. So doing XSLT programming live is really hard, and I find myself discovering things I didn't know, like at the worst possible moment. So for instance, I just discovered while doing an XPath exercise with my students that // is not the same as ancestor or self in some contexts, even though it should be. And so things like that where I really do stumble a lot when XSLT betrays me, which it does all the time. Now, the thing about it is that really that's what you're doing when you're running XSLTs. Like I'll turn to Matt Christie, who's an expert in XSLT, and he'll be sitting next to me and I'll say, why didn't that work? And he'll say, I don't know, because XSLT is just kind of like that, right? And one student said to me actually afterwards, Laura, it was really good to see you struggling and to see you troubleshooting, because then I realized that just because I wasn't perfect at working with XSLT didn't mean that I didn't know what I was doing. So, there is that aspect of it, but it is very difficult, and I'd love any insight. I know a lot of you teach programming languages. I'd love any insight you might have into how to do it better. So I think I'm gonna stop sharing screen. How do I do that? Oh, there. And, we can just have a discussion here. If anybody wants to see more from the Programming for Humanists class, I'm happy to show that. Or if you have questions or comments about teaching webinars, I'd love to hear